This is an extract from the Leader podcast by the Evening Standard, hosted by me, David Marsland. To hear the whole thing, search for us on your podcast provider. The order came in a tweet sent after 9 o'clock last night from the Health Secretary's account. Local lockdowns would be coming into force in Greater Manchester, parts of West Yorkshire and East Lancashire with barely 3 hours' notice. That was news to the Mayor of Leicester, Sir Peter Soulsby.
Even now, there's a number of questions about travel and other aspects of this that haven't been spelt out. And of course, the people of Leicester are turning to me, to the council, and saying, well, what can we can't and what can't we do, and when can we do it? And the answer to that is, well, we'll let you know as soon as the government tells us.
But the government wasn't done yet. This afternoon, Boris Johnson went back to the Downing Street podium to announce some of the national restrictions that were due to be lifted would now carry on.
Until the 15th of August at the earliest, casinos, bowling alleys, skating rinks and the remaining close contact services must remain closed. Indoor performances will not resume. Pilots of larger crowds in sports venues and conference centres will not take place, and wedding receptions of up to 30 people will not be permitted. But ceremonies, of course, can continue to take place in line with COVID-secure guidelines.
Last night, Matt Hancock wrote on Twitter that he had to move swiftly after seeing the data. We now know the government's advisory group does not have confidence that the crucial R number is still below 1 in England. Mr Hancock also said last night that his lockdown was largely due to households meeting and not abiding to social distancing. Our editorial column hopes London takes notice.
The logic of using limited, localised curbs to keep the virus under control is sensible enough. But we hope it isn't necessary in the capital, and at least two things need to happen to ensure that it doesn't. The first is for ministers to be far clearer in their messaging about what the rules are. Constant changes in what's permitted make it hard even for people determined to comply. More important is personal responsibility. Social distancing, regular hand washing and avoiding unlawful large gatherings are as important as ever. The fight against coronavirus continues and everyone must play their part.
Well, our political reporter Sophia Sleigh is with me now. And Sophia, if people were starting to get a bit lax after lockdown, this is all probably going to come as a bit of a shock to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm certainly not exaggerating when I say this has come as a shock to lots of people. None of us really saw that coming last night. I was looking at my phone, gone 9 o'clock at night, thinking, oh my goodness. We didn't see it coming. The government has come under a lot of criticism for the way that was announced overnight. It was sort of a flurry of tweets from the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, and a pooled video clip that went out to the broadcasters. And it sort of, left everyone a little bit shocked, not really knowing how to deal with it, not really knowing what to say. I think the criticism in terms of the announcement is fair. It could have been a little bit better. It came as a huge shock to people. However, I think, you can't criticise the government for acting. This is part of Boris Johnson's whack-a-mole approach, he described it, where, you're going to have to expect these localised lockdowns. Where there's a spike, they're going to have to crack down on it. And we were warned about that. It's just the way this announcement came out was quite a shock, and they've come under criticism for.
Yeah, it was barely 3 hours notice before the restrictions came in. And Matt Hancock was pretty clear that he was saying it was caused by households meeting and not abiding by social distancing rules. But then again, as our editorial column has pointed out today, no one's really clear about what is and isn't allowed at the moment, are they?
Yeah, there's still huge confusion. When I speak to my friends and family, they don't know what's the right rules and what's not. I think, the government says use your common sense, and people are to a certain extent, but we've been encouraged to go back to work, we've been encouraged to go shopping and return to a level of normal life again, and we're seeing these spikes again. So it's no surprise in a way.
And the Health Secretary has acknowledged that bringing these restrictions in parts of the north of England is going to be really disruptive, particularly with Eid underway.
Yeah, one aspect that's quite sad about this announcement is it will have an impact on many Muslim communities that are celebrating Eid this weekend. The official guidelines basically recommend that where possible, religious celebrations and services should take place outdoors. And hopefully a lot of people with the nice hot weather will be able to have celebrations in parks and things like that. I understand some imams have arranged things in parks. I mean, you can still go to the mosque and things like that, you know, because they have social distancing in place. But it's sad for, I think a lot of families would have met, you know, round each other's houses this weekend to celebrate and spend time together. So it's taken that aspect away for many people. But hopefully with the hot weather, you know, they can work around it by meeting in parks, because you are allowed to meet other families and friends socially distanced in a park in those areas.
And Sophia, one story that's kind of gone on throughout the pandemic was the issue over care homes, and you've been covering some new developments in that today, haven't you?
Yeah, it's another tough one. I mean, you know, there's so many families out there that really want to go and see their elderly relatives, their grandparents, their mums, their dads, their aunties in care homes, but care bosses have basically said today and yesterday that they are unlikely to allow visits for weeks and weeks yet, they think, because basically what's happened is the government has withdrawn a home testing kit that was being used in the residential care sector, and the government said, you know, these aren't up to standard, we're going to find an alternative, we'll come back to you. But the problem is in order to allow visitors into care homes, you need to have that testing in place. So, you know, care home bosses are quite worried about this, and, you know, it's going to have an impact on, you know, poor residents that haven't seen, you know, their families for weeks and weeks. I know there's obviously some care homes that have got gardens, and I know that some have had sort of socially distanced visits where they've got, you know, they put relatives in PPE and things like that, but not everywhere can do that, and, you know, that relies on the hot weather as well.